Okay, welcome, Julia Axe. Thank you so much for sitting down and chatting with me today. How are you doing?
Hanging in there, like like everyone, I think.
I, of course, know you primarily as a singer, but you're like a jack of all trades. Tell me, what do you do? What do you consider yourself?
I always have a tough time answering this question, and I still haven't found a good way to answer it. But I guess, a lot of hyphens. I guess, um, opera singer, actor, creator, writer, director, film, TV, stage, all the creator, performer. It doesn't fit on a business card very well.
Well, creative performer, I think, fits kind of nicely in there.
It does, but then it's not like as descriptive. It's like, what does that even mean? It's so general. But I could just put all the hyphens.
I mean, doesn't that make you mysterious and marketable?
I wish it did. If it did, I don't know. Things might be different.
But I love that you kind of do a little of everything because I feel like singers get so boxed in. And I feel like that's part of what the pandemic has made me realize about myself and other people is I look at actors and they're always like doing all kinds of things. But singers seem to only be singers. I don't know why that is.
I don't know why that is either. And I think, it's kind of funny. Like, you see a deflator mouse or any sort of operetta that has dialogue. And I was always so struck by how uncomfortable the classical singers around me, not everyone obviously, but like a lot of them, it's just like, oh, this is like something different, no music underneath me using my voice to say words that. And I was that always struck me as just like, oh, this is kind of different, because like, even though we're professional voice users, we're so used to having the support of an orchestra beneath us, or a piano or something else. It's suddenly like dialogue feels so naked. So it feels like a very foreign experience, I think, maybe to a lot of classical singers. And like, I grew up, both my parents are classical musicians, so I kind of grew up, or like, I didn't think it was different to know who Puccini was when you're like in fifth grade. And so it wasn't something that I like chose. I was just brought up with it, and then I still had all my other interests, and it was just a normal part of my life, which I think kind of makes has helped me kind of like see beyond the constrictions of what is typically associated with classical singing, the classical music world.
I'm sure you were so influenced by your parents, of course. Who else are you influenced by?
They obviously are the prime like musical influences for me growing up, because I just grew up with world class singers coaching in the other room with my mom, and my dad calling me into the room saying like, Julia, come listen to this passage of some of Traviata, and then we would just like weep together, and I was like, this is normal. So that upbringing definitely like laid the foundation for my appreciation of the arts in general, and classical music and opera. um but then, my dad tells a lot of dad jokes. Like, my dad's a really silly person, even when he was teaching music theory, you know to me or to any of his classes. Like, I he would always joke. So I grew up in this like very kind of silly household, and we would watch, the Mel Brooks movies, and like Airplane, and all those sort of older comedic movies. And I loved animated features, and sort of off the beaten path animated features, like Emperor's New Groove, which is still kind of mainstream, but it's not considered like one of the greats and stuff. So I think my sense of comedy is rooted in sort of like an older style, and also a really kind of theatrical style that comes from liking animated films. So there's this sort of like childlike silliness and wonder that I try to maintain even into my adulthood.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
That's really lucky to have.
And then now, I guess, like, I'm really impacted by like kind of crazy artists or again, artists who are kind of like on off the beaten path a little bit, like Tilda Swinton's work. I'm always just like so inspired. I'm like, I don't know what you're about to do, but I want to see it. And, sketch comedy, like even old stuff like the Ben Stiller show, which I started going through that for the first time, and Sid Caesar, and kind of learning the roots of sketch comedy and stuff, has been really impactful. I mean, I had like some weird success on social media, kind of combining them all, which was very validating because I didn't think there was a place in the world for me to combine everything that had affected me or that I was interested in.
That's right. Didn't Ariana Grande like tweet you or something?
Well, I went viral for that. Like, I made the little video of like Julie Andrews singing Seven Rings, and
Yes.
then I made her music video of it, and then she added the music video to her Instagram grid, which is apparently where you want to be on Instagram. I mean, it was pretty fucking cool. I don't know. It's cool.
Well, yeah.
I don't know. It was such a weird time and experience that I still like. It still kind of boggles my mind that it happened. But again, kind of validating to combine everything that I like
It's
into one
like,
video.
yeah, it's like totally random and awesome and dreamlike.
Yeah, I think like it's kind of cringy at times. Like some of my favorite comments. I know they say don't read the comments, but I did at that time. I did like reading the comments because people were both bewildered by it. They're just like, I don't know what I'm watching, but I think I like it. And I was like, yeah, that's what I want. Like, that's what I hope you would feel, I guess.
I saw your video first before I ever saw the Ariana Grande video. So I was watching it, and of course, I know you. And I'm like, of course, this is, obviously a comedic spoof on something, even though I don't know what that is. It was hilarious.
Thank you.
Piggybacking on that, what kind of projects get you really excited?
I like new stuff. I like stuff that has never been done before. I like combining things that maybe shouldn't go together. Like you would think they maybe shouldn't go together. But, I mean, a lot of my comedy is sort of like highbrow, lowbrow, I guess you could say. And, it's like one of my favorite sketches I ever made with my writing partner, Steve, which he wrote it actually, is a parody of Casablanca where Ilsa's big secret is that she farts when she gets aroused, and it's just a big fart joke. But it's shot like Casablanca. It's like beautifully lit in this like black. It's just a big fart joke.
I saw that video.
And then beyond the comedy stuff, I mean, I get really excited about things that are particularly feminist right now. I'm like pretty, especially during the pandemic when I've had time to sort of meditate on the things that are really important to me and like the changes I want to see in the world around me for myself and for like my fellow women and non-binary folks, and for the men around me. um as RBG said, like patriarchy hurts everyone. So I'm looking for things that have like full complex female characters. Those are the characters I look to play. um for a long time I've had times at various points in my life when people have asked me, they're like, what's your dream role? What would you love to play? And my answer was, and still kind of is, although I feel like we're getting closer, is I don't think it's been written yet. So waiting on that.
Okay. Or you could
Taking,
write it.
maybe maybe taking matters into my own hands, but I'd also, like to, I'm a serial collaborator too. So I love to, work with people on that. And it's just, I mean, people who are passionate and feeling and emotional and not afraid to give 178%. I know these are kind of general things, but those are the things I look for. That could be comedy, that could be drama. I'm looking for people and artists and collaborators who have something to say, who have a viewpoint, who have an opinion. And then we just go balls to the walls with whatever that concept is.
I love it. So, of course, you grew up with your mom being Ann Baltz, the queen of improv.
Yes.
And I'm sure, I mean, I can only imagine what your household was like. You mentioned it a little bit. Um, but did you like do improv with her growing up? Like,
Yeah. Yeah. And we
yeah.
still do. I went over the other day and, you know, she'll just sit down at the piano and just start playing something. And then she'll get this look in her eye. Well, she'll look up at me. I'll be like, oh, are we going to improv now? And then we'll just improvise for like 10 minutes together. Um, and so, yeah, I mean, I grew up with it. Again, it wasn't weird to me. I thought everybody did this. But yeah, I grew up improvising, which I think is also why, again, why when I was pursuing opera predominantly for a while there, like I, I, I didn't, there were times when I felt, sort of suffocated by the tradition of it, artistically suffocated, because I think there's a lot of, like, it seems to me in my somewhat limited experience, like particularly in the classical world, that it's like either you're a pawn, at a certain level, you're just like a pawn. You show up, you know your music, you go here, you go there, you sing it right, you sing it in the style because you've coached the living daylights out of it. Like, conductor knows what he wants, director knows what she wants, this and that. And then there's like a level at the tippy top that where you flip over and no one says no to you, and you're just sort of like allowed to run creatively rampant because of egos, because of budgetary, because of billing, because of name recognition, whatever. And so I think it's actually quite rare to find a classical music production, an opera production, where where everyone on the stage and everyone participating is regarded as a creative person with opinions and art to offer and like life to bring to the project. And in a lot of my experience, that was sort of what was missing from the opera world for me. And so I think improv in the classical music world is like an excellent, almost necessary way to encourage singers in particular to think for ourselves, um, and discover what music lives inside of us with the instrument that we have and the way that we've trained it to, execute what we want to execute. So yeah.
Yeah, I completely agree with everything you're saying. It's so interesting. You're completely right. It's like we in classical music we are so boxed in, right? And we're constantly told to think outside of the box, but that doesn't actually happen. It's a very weird conundrum,
Yeah.
right? Explore the character, but within these certain confines.
Yeah, but in a way that won't freak our donors out.
Yeah.
you know I remember, I mean, I sang Voi che sapete every freaking week since I was 17, and they're just like, you're a Carabino, and I'm like, great, this isn't bad because I love Carabino and I love
Sure.
Meredith Figaro.
Yes.
And I remember I was so excited. This is like 8 years into singing this aria, right? I discovered this production at Covent Garden with Renat Shaham where she ornamented the second half of the aria, Voi che sapete.
I love that.
I loved it. The ornaments they made sense. I'm like, holy shit, this is at Covent Garden, so like it's probably gonna be okay now because we need that green flag to like do anything different.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, it makes sense with the drama. Like he's embellishing on this when he repeats it because he's getting more and more, flustered and insistent. It all made sense. Any which way you looked at it, it all made sense. And I remember I coached it with like 5 different coaches, and every time I would sort of be like, hey, so there's this version, I have some like ornaments I'd like to try. They're like, all right, you can try them. And then I did them, and they're just like, if you really want to play it safe in these auditions, so like don't do, the safe thing is to not do them because you might grossly offend somebody in the room. I'm like, listen, I know I love the traditional way. I mean, like, I'm not a purist by any stretch of the word, but I'm just like, if I'm gonna so gross is if the risk here is that I'm going to so grossly offend somebody on the audition panel that I will sing myself out of a job because I ornamented 2 pages of one of the most well-known arias in like the history of classical. I'm like, I don't. Something's not adding up. Like in terms of what what I want to be involved in my life. Anyway, the ornaments aren't even that out there. You know what I mean? It's like you can't move an inch.
Right. You
And
can't
it,
move an inch until you're Renee Fleming status.
and then you know there are sort of like I mean, I don't know about Renee Fleming specifically, but like I've been in the room where it's been like sort of toxic environments where you have this big star who can just literally do whatever they want. Different
Right.
different things every performance, like
Yeah.
blocking, not even musically, and I'm not against that if we're all kind of agreed on it, but it's just sort of like this weird this weird environment where some rules apply to some people and not to others, and the roles are so drastically at the opposite ends of the spectrum. Look at the environment of the company. Look at the environment for all of your artists who are artists, not just megaphones.
Sure. It's just the hypocrisy of it all. We're trained just constantly, constantly. You have to sing all of this correctly. You have to sound good. You have to look a certain way. You have to think a certain way, but you need to be an individual. Well, which is it? I don't know.
And I don't think a lot of people in power do know. I've been saying this for a long time and I've felt this way for a long time that like this particular conversation, if people talk about how like, the hot button phrase is like, oh, opera is dying. It's like I don't believe opera is dying per se, but I'm like, I do think it could use a revamp. And I think this is the part that is going to keep it alive, not the spectacle, not the huge budgets. It's the part where you like foster the life and vibrancy of the artists that you're hiring to perform. You're just
Yeah.
it's the electricity in the theater that you cannot pay for or replicate. It comes from a culture standpoint, and that culture is dictated from the top down.
Yeah. I totally agree with you. I think the whole music industry just needs a big revamp.
Yeah.
So, how do you feel your improv skills has kind of evolved you into the person and performer you are today?
Well, it certainly has. I mean, it keeps you on your toes, and it's a muscle, right? It's a muscle in acting improv or in musical improv. It's a muscle that needs to be exercised, and when it's not exercised, then it sort of starts to atrophy. And what that means and what that looks like is that, if at least in myself, is like I try to gain control of the things around me though, because I don't feel that I'm equipped to think on my feet, because the thinking on my feet muscle has not been worked. And I get really stiff on stage, and my thinking patterns and my creative process become just like more and more closed in and myopic almost. So improvising, um again, whether that's musically or acting wise, it leaves the mental channels open to new possibilities, sort of the yes and, right? Like this is like the classic improv thing, like you never want to say no, you want to say yes and I think that's an important thing just in life as a person, and as an artist, and particularly for me as someone who wants to like explore new things that might pop up. So if there's like a little nugget of a project that pops up, I'm like, oh, what's that? And then I'm open to it, and I have the mental practice of like thinking about the possibilities of that pretty immediately and deciding whether it's something I want to be a part of or not. um And then as an artist, I mean, you just have to stay loose. You just have to stay fluid and flexible like a tree, you know, strong and flexible.
Yeah, it's scary for a lot of people to go there.
It's terrifying. I don't like doing it sometimes because it's terrifying, but I also know that it's like going to the gym. I fucking hate working out. Like I fucking hate working out, but I'm like, I know this is good for my body. I know I will be happy later. It's the same thing. I'm like, I don't want to put myself out there, especially public improvising. Oh my god, I used to go on TikTok and like do vocal warm-ups and like improvise stuff to try to get over that fear. I stopped doing that, but not for that reason. Because I thought it was good for me. I thought it was good to practice not being in control.
You are braver than I to go on TikTok to do that.
I
Can
know.
you think of a time where maybe you were in an audition or a show or something where you really had to like really think on your feet suddenly?
Yeah, there was one when I was doing Midsummer Night's Dream in Griffith Park, the play, not the opera. Um, and it's outdoors. It's like on a hill. It's outdoor Shakespeare. Um, and we lost power in the middle of one of my scenes, and it was nighttime already. This was like act 3, I think, or something. So like the sun had set, it was completely dark outside, and then we lost all the stage lights, and it just went pitch black. And I was like in the middle of a line, and there's like 2,000 people on this hillside, and I think at the time, like right when it happened, I just stopped talking and I went, yes, which was not my best improv. And then we just kind of kept going with this. I just kept going with the scene, and then eventually worked in like a. It was the scene where Helena's like basically telling Demetrius that he can literally do anything to her and she would still love him. So she's like, I'm on my knees and like beat me, like submissive me. I forget the lines. These lines are in my bones, but I can't remember them right now. And she like lists all the things he could do to her, and I just like added like light me at the end, and of like the things he could do, and the audience was like, wow. I don't know. I remember like my leading man got a bloody nose one time on stage in the middle of our love scene, and we were supposed to kiss, and I was like, are we gonna do this? He's also wearing like a white linen suit was his costume. It was like
Oh,
horrible. I don't think we kissed. I think that was just one where he had to like, we're together now and we're gonna exit stage left.
I think that's a good call.
Yeah. And then
Yeah.
he had like tissue up his nose for the rest of the show, which was also, I found like justifications in my head to like fall in love with that guy.
Yeah, that's really sexy quality.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's like singing to you like this, and it's just like these little do you have any stories? Has anything happened to you?
I think one of my favorite stories was oh, no, you were in the scene. Do you remember when we did the industry hopscotch? Remember we showed up for the very last performance and they were having that Chinese wedding?
Yes. Yes.
It was
Talk about a production that we had to be on our feet all the time. How did I forget about this?
oh my gosh, I know. That was crazy.
That was oh, and then that same production, like, for anybody who's going to listen to this interview who doesn't know, it was all out site specific opera in downtown Los Angeles.
Yes. We were in Chinatown, the Chinatown Plaza.
And going for 6 hours a day. And so we were having to sing this opera while navigating just whoever happened to be in this Chinatown Plaza.
Right.
And there was a man at one point. I had a little scene where I had to lead the audience around this fountain, and downtown LA is full of a lot of colorful characters at certain points. And one day I led them around the corner to go around the little fountain, and there was a man bathing himself in the fountain. And I was supposed to like stop right in front of it and like sing to them, and I did. So there's this man like having a grand old time in this fountain. I
Oh
don't
my
know.
gosh, I never knew that.
I don't think you had to go where that fountain was. I think
No.
me and Madeline were the only ones who had to go. That was fun.
Wow. Kristen and I were off on a bench off to the side, and then we would come into the scene, and there was a man on a bicycle who liked
Yes.
to come, right, and just harass us right around us while we were sitting there waiting on the bench. And it got to the point where we needed to involve the ASM and have somebody be a barrier between us.
So, improv helps with these situations. These are the times. Stay
For
loose.
real. What I loved about showing up to the end of a Chinese wedding was we had to change our entire scene to accommodate this trellis that they had,
Right.
right, that they
Oh
had
my God,
set
it's all
up.
coming back to me. In the middle of, like, took over the plaza, right?
Yes, they
Oh,
had taken
yeah.
over the whole thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they had covered the entire plaza in red rose petals.
Right. Never a dull moment with the industry.
I know. The new opera is probably where I've used my improv skills the most.
Yeah. Because now we're seeing pieces that encourage it. Like, I've done a couple where, like, I'll get my own vocal pattern, and then the other singers will have their vocal patterns, and then we all you just sing it. I'd like to incorporate, like, more of that into more narrative structures, I think. Like, right now they exist, like, very kind of art house ways, sort of like abstractions, at least in my experience.
What is the most used app on your phone?
Right now it's Twitter, which, my God, I never thought I would say. And it's only Twitter because I've recently started exploring the NFT space and the Web3 space. I won't say cryptocurrency space because I know cryptocurrency is part of that, but, like, the space is, yeah, like NFTs and Web3, which can sort of be polarizing topics. And I was very, very resistant to them for a long time. But seeing the potential for artists, particularly musical artists, down the line, like, we're just in the baby phases of this new technology, um, I'm really, really fascinated by it. And there are some opera singers getting into the space, doing some interesting things. And all of that community lives on Twitter. So, like, as much as I try to mitigate my social media, I guess the app doesn't have to be social media, but it is the one that I was like, would it be weird if I just said, like, general settings? I just look at it all the time.
You're
That's
just
the app.
constantly in there pushing buttons.
Notification on, notification off.
I have to
No,
admit, I didn't expect you to say Twitter.
I honestly, like, it's been a recent thing. Like, this whole community that I'm currently interested in and kind of getting involved in lives on Twitter. Twitter and Discord, Discord is an app that is sort of like a bunch of chat rooms. Um, and in that space, there's such an emphasis on building communities within projects, like some projects more uh, manipulatively than others, but um, there are some. It's sort of a really cool social experiment and sort of anthropological microscope to, like, look at humans under, if you try to, like, strip away all the systems that have been in place and look at what people are trying to do if you just start from scratch. And, like, some of it's, like, really heartbreaking, and the other parts are really, really fascinating, which is one of the most exciting parts of it, are that creatives are at the helm of this, like, and creatives are what people want. People with money are like, we need the creatives, we need you know we need the artists. So that's sort of what I'm dealing with right now.
Interesting.
And then probably Instagram after that, because, like, it's where most of my friends are.
Very good. Well, thank you so much for chatting with me. This was super fun.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, of course. Anytime.
Honored to be asked.
Yes, of course.